Okay, I think we're recording. I'm going to discuss UAPs, CE5. You may hear things like LCS and PMR. So if you don't know what LCS, PMR, go check out Tom Campbell. UAP, well, that's pretty much all over YouTube nowadays. So I don't think that one's a stretch to the imagination for people to figure out, or CE5 for that matter. It's Stephen Greer and many other people actually do that. Shoot, I can't remember the other fellow's site now. Anyways, there's more than enough information out there. So let's scale this down a bit from large crafts and calling them in, because that's where some of the fun is, right? When you're outside in the dark, you might do these things. And I still like doing that. So one day at the end of September, I was outside having a smoke, and the wind keeps blowing from left and right. It's going clockwise and then counterclockwise, because I'm in a 90-degree corner. And the way the wind was blowing was identical that you would see in an eddy in a river current, where it goes clockwise and then counterclockwise and clockwise and counterclockwise. It just keeps shifting, and your minerals are being put into the water this way. Big surprise, eh? So it's something of that kind of a situation, but it's me smoking. And at the one point, I exhale a lot of smoke to the right, and I get a flash out of the corner of my eye. I'm like, wait a second, there's a sphere, probably about the size of what would fit into a standard Rubik's Cube, right? Something like that. And just as it happened, it already finished the entire operation, the whole thing. So check this out for details. This is neat because it shrunk all that carbon, not the whole smoke, just what it captured in that sphere was compressed into what would be more like a contact lens, but a little deeper, not quite this deep, but a little deeper, right? So you know, it had a unique, uh, not like a tea saucer deeper than that, but not a bowl either. You're in between. So it's kind of like a contact lens with a little lip and depth, okay? So it shrunk a little bit of carbon into basically 3 millimeter wide, or about 1/8 of an inch, I guess. It's probably pretty close to that. Um, Wide, little tiny disc. Now this this is kind of neat, okay? This is consciousness interacting with the LCS, Larger Consciousness System, very quickly in a manner that was quite interesting because, oh, where's the camera here? See if I can get this right. See, the top rim was absolutely solid, so it wasn't see-through. You could tell that there was enough carbon to make that completely perfect, and then there was a cutout, like a window. And so a chunk of it went all the way down to the base and back up to the lip. Now, it was perfectly symmetrical, and it was also a nice carbon. It's really made of ash, right? So this carbon is solid all the way down underneath the rim. So the rim's still there, and the cutout's underneath. And that's the only other perfect seam that's definitely looking more solid than the rest of this surface area. The rest of the surface area looked like it was through a war zone. It had been through a war zone, but it was because it was perfect, but it was very see-through. It was fluffy almost in a way. You could see through it enough that it was just barely a perfect skin. Excuse me. And that absolutely fascinated me, that it did such a perfect job, but had barely enough carbon to do the job. But it had enough carbon to make a perfect ring, the perfect top ring, and the perfect hole in this window, right? And so the wind's blowing, and this little tiny 3 millimeter jobby here, craft type of deal, it's just sitting there, it's not moving. And it, of course, catches my eye, and I think, well, now that's interesting. And the more I stare at it, the more I realize it can move around. Now, where the window is, acts like the back end. You naturally realize that everything else is energetically charged, and the rim is charged, which is keeping it perfectly flat. So you were able to move it around perfectly flat, up, down, around, and I played with that damn thing, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. It was like being a kid again. It was absolutely fun because you couldn't help but play with it and think, every kid on the planet had one of these free, no batteries, little remote control devices. I mean, look at it. 3 millimeters? Can't tell me that you don't have room for the world's coolest toy and the ultimate small box, whatever you could do to put it in. It would be so tiny. That's the thing you're going to lose, probably, is a container. But either way, it was absolutely fascinating. And yeah, it really looked like it was in a war zone, and yet the lip was perfect. So to have invented that, or the larger conscious system invent that so quick, just like boom, as an example, to answer a question that I had, because I was originally out there having smokes thinking, anybody out there, and it's fun to get them to do their little power-ups, right? Because they glow. Yeah, tell me it's a plane. Not likely. And then, sometimes you get a bit of a show. You get the impossible, not driving, but the traveling behavior that damn well a plane wouldn't have a hope in imitating. Nothing would. No helicopter, nothing. And so that's what I was really out there doing, and I didn't get that. Instead, I got this other answer, which was to a question I had of how cheap could you manufacture an anti-gravity craft, assuming the 2046 argument is legit. And even if it's not, we know this kind of thing happens on the planet on a regular basis anyways. 12,068 years makes sense to me. It doesn't mean we understand which part of the 12,068 year cycle we're in, but I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination to say, yeah, we're kind of near the end of that somehow. I mean, hello, the moon no longer covers the sun. It's always a ring during an eclipse. It used to go dark when I was a kid, not anymore. So yes, things are changing. And it's not because the moon's changing size either, thanks. Okay, and no, I'm not listening to any of you people that call yourself a lampshade, and I know where you stick your bright ideas, so I'm not having it. I don't even need to hear from anybody that flaky. I'm just not doing it. Snowflakes, go park it somewhere. I'm not interested. But what I will tell you is that the larger consciousness system can answer your questions at times, and this one blew my mind. Is if you really could start to comprehend something that simple, that cheap, with so little carbon involved, even if we manufactured as people, what are we going to do? Probably get a silicone mold, and probably, here's what my first take would be, is put a negative charge in the middle, right? Positive charge on the top ring. Now that's going to be the only electrical components on top of, say, a silicone mold. A little bit of ash, or say nanocarbon, or even the C60 stuff would be great, or the black nanocarbon. That's another animal all in itself from my other stories, which I don't even think are online anymore. Old implants from the 70s and the 80s, but that's how that goes, early 80s. So I think, yeah, if you did 2 electrical leads on a silicone type of mold, and you pump, say, 432 hertz through it at about 10 volts, then yeah, I think you could shape it, and you need a little epoxy or something to hold the shape. But if you can get it to vibrate at just the right frequency where you get a skeleton structure, and you keep that structure going until it completely dries, pop it off, cut out your window so that these hard lines are still going to be there. And depending how small and how heavy this thing is, you may discover that, okay, it needs a hell of a bigger charge than what I got demonstrated as. That was just instantaneous, and it had enough energy to do its thing immediately. And I was like, that's impressive. That's really neat. And it was a lot of fun. You have no idea how much fun that was. But if people out there decided, let's actually make this, how small could we potentially make something like that? And I think if you start using sound and low electricity to create the structure, and find something that's not heavy enough to keep that carbon in that footprint dried. This one was light, fluffy, and I didn't dare touch it. I was afraid. It was very fragile, I'm sure, but I want something that's a bit more permanent and portable. We may discover that That's a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of work to try to figure out what's it going to take to make it small enough that thought interacts with it quite easily. How light does that really need to be, you know? And then you'll see, well, that's the challenge, I guess, just to see, can it be done? I don't see why not. I mean, it was certainly demonstrated within a blink of an eye, and it didn't go away. I got to play with it. I didn't keep it though. I felt that was a little dangerous to keep, and I eventually uh, watched it. I pushed it away and let it shoot up. It wasn't a really fast moving deal because of the shape and the charge it had. It had a natural tendency to boat like through water, so the hole was the back end, and you could pilot it quite easily and go a half decent speed. So it was a perfect show and tell. So if that's the answer to the cheapest craft that could be made for proof of concept, is just really a little bit of carbon. I mean, my goodness. I mean, you could steal that out of the air. Smokers not included. I mean, it's totally possible. So it's worth looking at. I think I'm going to leave it at that for now.